Hello and welcome to the Election Corner on One Man Think Tank. Today we will be discussing my 2020 Senate election prediction for the second week of October, which is October the 10th through October the 16th. Now, as you can see, I've already filled in the safe seats. For those of you who haven't seen my predictions before, I consider any seat that is safe but requires an incumbent flip to be at max a likely seat. This is because there is always an incumbency bias in play that can manifest itself in weird ways at the last minute, or unintentional changes at the polling box, so I don't want to mark them as safe because they will never truly be safe. But in, I'd say, 90 out of 100 scenarios, we can predict where they're going to be going just fine, so they get put up with the rest of the safe seats. This leaves Democrats with 48 safe seats and Republicans with 42, meaning the Democrats only need 2 seats in the presidency, or 3 seats. Republicans, however, need 8 seats, and the presidency, or 9 seats total. And this is simultaneously good news and bad news for the Republicans, because every seat currently listed as a toss-up right now, it has a Republican either incumbent or did have a Republican incumbent. Looking at you, Kansas. Now, here's an important factor in all of this. This is the GOP's worst year. So, for those of you who don't know, the Senate election occurs in 3 cycles, where you have Class 1 going, which will consist of 1/3, Class 2, a 2/3, and Class 3, a 3rd of the Senate. That's why some states are grayed out and why there's only 1 race, despite each state having 2 senators. So, right now, the GOP really needs to be on the defensive and not have an albatross around their neck who just got coronavirus and is spouting crazy things on Twitter. So, I hope that doesn't happen to them. Okay, so let's just go in with the likely seats. So, bad news for Republicans, that albatross means they don't actually have any likely seats. But the Democrats have 2, North Carolina and Maine. These 2 seats used to be very contentious, but as we've grown closer to Election Day, the Democrats have really started to split off and are now breaking 50% in some of these polls, while the Republicans are kind of finding their floor in the states, which are mid-30s, low 40s, which is not a good place to be, especially when you're an incumbent. That's going to be a key factor in all of these races remaining except for Kansas, the fact that these polling numbers are against the incumbent. If an incumbent is polling badly against their challenger, that's a really bad sign. So incumbents don't get as much of a boost when they're polling well, but they get a lot more of a detriment when they're polling poorly. But Democrats are pulling away in these states in all of their races, including all their statewide races. So for Maine, that just includes the president, while in North Carolina, that does also include the governor's race, all of which are pulling away for the Democrats, showing a statewide trend in both of the states. Now, let's knock off the states which are leans but not toss-ups. So that would be Montana, Alaska, and Texas. So, right now, these 3 states are leans, which means going to the... Sorry, I was thinking about how to phrase that. Which means they are probably going to go to the incumbent party, but that candidate is polling poorly enough that you can, and they have strong challengers against them, that you can't really trust they'll be able to hold on to their power. To give you an idea, in all of these states, the Republican candidates, incumbents, have maintained a solid baseline of about high 40s to low 50s, which is great. That would normally lead to a likely. However, as election days approach, they've all dipped by about 2 points, so they're now getting into kind of they're averaging out from being at the, like I said, low 50s, high 40s to high 40s, mid 40s area, which does open room for the Democratic challengers to take their seats from them. And these are also strong challengers who have polled increasingly well as each week passes. That means, for right now, if there's any sort of wave scenario, all 3 of these states could become fodder for the Democrats. And, well, it's not even fodder. Gains for the Democrats. Republicans don't have any room for fodder. It's 50. If they lose 1 more seat, no more election. No more Senate. Well, the election ends either way. But the Senate, they'd lose the Senate. Now, with these 3 states out of the way, you might be thinking, oh, well, we've got 5 toss-ups remaining. No, we actually have 4, because there is 1 seat which is leans for the Democrats, and that's Iowa. In Iowa, we're seeing essentially, and you'll have to forgive me, I am very much extrapolating here, but in North Carolina and Maine, Iowa's doing what we saw there, where the candidate starts, as they get some publicity, starts to peel away, and the incumbent kind of flounders, and so Joni Ernst has not done a very good job of running this campaign. She's the Republican incumbent, while her opponent, Theresa Greenfield, is polling decently to very well. And the fact she started to get over 50% in some of the polling, even if it's not every poll, even if it's still a bit contentious, means the race there's momentum towards the Democrats, and you want October's a little bit late to be getting momentum, but it's better to get in October than November, the day before the election. You really want it in September-ish, because then you can start riding the early ballots. But she's polling really well, she's getting momentum, and if that leads up into Election Day, as it looks like it will, she's going to win the seat. So, leans, meaning we actually have 4 toss-up seats right now. If you haven't seen this channel before, I don't leave anything as a pure toss-up. I don't personally do that, because you can kind of predict which way a seat is going, no matter what. As such, all 4 of these are going to be tilts this time, no leans. So the first one is Kansas, a race which has suddenly become a lot more contentious in the past week. So for those of you who don't follow the polls, Kansas was, for a while, looking like it was going to be could be the 51 deciding seat. Eventually that title has gone to Iowa, but Kansas is still on the board. It then started to look like, oh, well, the Democrats have a chance, but the Republicans put in Marshall, and Marshall's not awful, and so we're going to keep pushing. Democrats are going to keep pushing, but they're probably not going to get it. So I've been in this leans category right here. Wave election, great for the Democrats, but otherwise, no. Now we have some really strange stuff coming out. So not only have we seen the incumbent Marshall really drop in the polls, we have also gotten a leaked internal from his campaign showing him losing. Which, you know what, campaigns have internals all the time that show them losing, but if you're the Republican going in a Republican-heavy state, and you have a internal showing you losing with, I think, something like 10% of voters undecided, that means you're not as stable as everyone thought you were. That also explains why, unlike some of these Republican races like Texas, where the campaigns are going internal, just over and over to pad the numbers to be like, look, we're doing really well. Give us money, in Texas, it's don't worry about us, but also give us some money, she's doing kind of well. In Kansas, the fact this got leaked, and the fact we have a Democratic internal showing similar levels of polling, just with slightly higher numbers. The Kansas one shows the Democrat in the lead with mid-40s. The Democratic one shows it at high 40s. Says Kansas is a lot more contentious than we thought it was going to be. Now down to South Carolina, the race everyone's interested in. Jamie Harrison versus Lindsey Graham. After their first debate, and it doesn't look like we might get a second one, because Lindsey Graham refuses to take a COVID test and has made the claim that black conservatives are the only black people who can get anywhere in South Carolina, really seems to be wanting to put his whole campaign in danger by proving the fact Lindsey Graham doesn't really know how to campaign. So for right now, it's tilt Republican because, you know what, maybe it's a bit of bias on, historical precedent, but South Carolina is as red as can be, and if you asked me in January if South Carolina was going to be contested, well, you can go back and watch the video, but I would say no. So right now I'm erring on the side of caution. They are polling neck and neck. There's a solid chance that despite the conservative candidate dropping Constitution candidate, dropping out and endorsing Lindsey Graham, it could be too late, and that could siphon off enough votes from Graham that Harrison could win. But for right now, we're going to assume third parties are, frankly, irrelevant in this, and Jamie Harrison's probably going to come within 1 or 2 points of Graham, but not win. Lastly, down to Georgia. So the main Georgia election, so literally what I do the night before is I pre-plan out the map and then adjust with any new info, because of course I post this on Saturday, so we get some last minute polling, but overall it doesn't really sway things that much. But in Georgia, after the polling we had this week, I was actually going to move Georgia back from tilt to leans, but nope, it's still leans, because we just got another batch of polling showing Ossoff doing okay, which is all he really needs to do. He's a Democratic challenger. And the Republican candidate hemorrhaging support to undecideds. Does that still mean does that mean they will switch sides? No, they'll probably turn out for the Republican or stay home, which in most cases results in a Republican victory, hence tilt. But Ossoff is doing well, and there's still about a third of a month left in this two-thirds of a month left in this campaign season. There is a solid chance Ossoff gains enough support in the last stretch he could flip this. Right now, still slightly favors the Republicans, but it's a toss-up for a reason. And the last state is Georgia's special election. Now, Georgia's special election was supposed to not be a contentious race. Well, it was supposed to be a contentious race, then it wasn't, and it's a massively contentious race again. The Democratic candidate, who was previously looking like he was going to have all of his votes siphoned off, resulting in a Republican versus Republican matchup, is now polling at the low 40s. He has consolidated support, and it looks like the final race will come down to a race between him, Raphael Warnock, and the incumbent who was appointed, not elected, that's always a factor in these, Kelly Loeffler. Now, we haven't seen one-on-one polling for quite a while. This is because, frankly, it's hard to do one-on-one polling in a runoff election when you don't know when it's not clearly defined. Unless, of course, you're doing some kind of internal polling to try and gain support with people. So what I'm going to say is controversial. Or, not controversial, but it's going to seem a little bit kind of out of left field, especially with how, no pun intended, conservative I'm being on my predictions. Georgia's special election, if it's Raphael Warnock versus Kelly Loeffler, will be tilt Democratic. He is polling incredibly well against her. She is polling poorly and has the campaign sense of a brick. After she has said, just her tweets alone are enough to make people go, I don't feel good about voting for you. Because she is, honestly, one of the worst campaigners I've ever seen. For those of you who don't know, she tweeted, after the Republican debate, the full text of what was sent to her to tweet, which says, here's a generic after-debate tweet, then the tweet. It wasn't meant to be funny. Someone clearly sent that to her, and she forgot to remove it, or she hired someone who forgot to remove it. That's not how you win a campaign in a state that's begging to turn blue in a race that, if Iowa doesn't flip, could decide the Senate. So there you have it. Final prediction right now, 52 for the Democrats, 48 for the Republicans. If you like the video, drop a like down below and also drop a comment. If you want to see more from this channel, click the subscribe button and the notification bell. If you want to hear more from me outside of YouTube, I have a Twitter, @OneManThinkTan1, the Roman numeral. I will post a link down in the description for it. But, as always, and most importantly, have a wonderful day.